Hi, I'm Adil, and this is the story of how being called too simple nearly broke me, until I turned that insult into a reason to build 2 companies and change lives. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or left behind, stay with me. Because what happened next? Even I didn't see it coming. I still remember the way she looked at me that evening. We were sitting in our usual spot, a small, cozy cafe that barely had enough space for 10 people. She stirred her tea, absently, not really meeting my eyes. "I don't think this is working anymore," she said flatly. I blinked. "What do you mean?" she sighed, her lips pressing together. "You're too simple, Adil. You don't have drive, ambition. You're comfortable working your little job and living in your small apartment. That's not the kind of life I want." Her words hit me harder than I expected. We'd been together for almost 2 years. I thought we understood each other. Sure, I didn't have a fancy car or a big bank account, but I believed in honesty, stability, and slow, steady growth. I thought that mattered. "I may not be flashy," I said carefully, "but I work hard. I'm saving. I have plans." She shook her head, clearly unmoved. "You don't dream big, Adil. You're okay being average. I need someone who wants more, who wants to make something of themselves." Her tone wasn't angry. That made it worse. It was cold. Final. Like she had rehearsed it 100 times before saying it out loud. I didn't try to argue. What would have been the point? If someone doesn't see your worth, there's no speech in the world that can change their mind. She left soon after, leaving behind a half-empty teacup and 2 years of memories. I sat there for a long time, replaying her words in my mind. Too simple. Not ambitious enough. Comfortable being average. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't curse her name. But something inside me shifted. For the next few days, I went through the motions. My job at the IT support desk didn't change. The bills still came. Life kept moving. But inside, I was restless, like my soul had been lit on fire. I started staying up late after work, watching online videos about entrepreneurship, coding, and business models. I read books, something I hadn't done in years. I listened to podcasts on my commute instead of music. My friends noticed. So did my boss. "You're different these days," he said one morning. "Just learning," I replied with a small smile. "Trying to figure some things out." He didn't press further, but I could tell he respected it. And slowly, the idea that had been swimming in the back of my mind started to take form. I could build something of my own. I had always loved problem solving. At work, I often fixed bugs others couldn't, created shortcuts for clunky systems, and made life easier for everyone around me. What if I turned that skill into a business? I didn't have much money saved, but I had time. And hunger. I began offering small freelance services online, fixing websites, building basic automation tools, optimizing small business systems. The clients were few and far between at first, but every successful job gave me more confidence. More fuel. Meanwhile, I never stopped working my full-time job. I was tired, sometimes mentally drained, but I kept going, because every time I thought about slowing down, I remembered that evening at the cafe. I remembered the way she said, "You're too simple." That line became my motivator. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I realized that maybe, just maybe, she was right. Maybe I had been too comfortable, but not anymore. My first real client came from a cold email, had built a simple website optimization tool, and offered to implement it for free to a local clothing boutique that had a clunky online store. I didn't expect a reply, but the next morning, I had an email with the subject line, "Can we talk?" Her name was Rima, the boutique owner. She was skeptical, but desperate. Online sales had tanked, and her developer had disappeared mid-project. I offered to fix her site and set up basic analytics to track her traffic for a tiny fee. "I'm not promising miracles," I told her, "but I can make your website faster, cleaner, and easier to manage." It took me 3 nights and 2 weekends to finish the job. When I delivered the final version, she was stunned. "This feels like a whole new store," she said. "How did you do this?" I didn't tell her I'd taught myself everything from YouTube tutorials and late-night forums. I just smiled and said, "I listen to what users want, that's all." She paid me double what I'd asked, and then she referred me to 3 more business owners. That's when I realized something. I didn't need to be flashy. I didn't need to be loud. I just needed to be useful and consistent. Within 2 months, I had 5 regular clients. I set up a website for my freelance work and called it Fix Right Systems. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every evening, after work, I'd log into Fix Right's dashboard and manage tasks. I was sleeping less, sure, but I'd never felt more alive. Then came my first breakdown. A client from Canada had hired me to build a back-end automation system for her CRM. I underestimated the scope, badly. Halfway through, the integration started throwing errors I couldn't fix. She got angry. I stayed up for 36 hours trying to make it work, and when I couldn't, she pulled the plug and posted a bad review on my freelancing profile. It gutted me. I stared at the screen for hours that night, all that momentum, gone in a click. I almost gave up. But then I remembered something my father used to say. The first time you fail is the first time you're really building something. So I didn't quit. I reached out to the client, apologized, and offered to help find her someone else at no charge. She was surprised, then softened. We ended the contract on a peaceful note, and then I took a deep breath and fixed everything on the back end anyway, for myself. Because I had to learn, mistakes became my fuel. I started documenting every error, every bug, every lesson. I built a personal troubleshooting library, which eventually became a PDF guide that I offered to other freelancers. They loved it. Some even paid for it. That's when something clicked. I wasn't just a freelancer anymore. I was building systems, I was solving problems at scale, and I had something bigger in mind. 3 months later, I hired my first contractor, a friend from university who had just been laid off. I gave him small tasks, editing code, managing client inboxes, updating spreadsheets. It freed me up to think about growth. I remember telling him, "This won't be big right away, but we're building something real here." He nodded. "I believe you." It felt surreal to be on the other side, to be giving someone else the kind of opportunity I once begged for. And I took it seriously. I started reading about leadership, team building, scaling. I mapped out what Fixrite could become if I played it smart. I wanted to be the company that people trusted, not just for results, but for integrity. No shortcuts, no fake promises, just solid, honest work. That's what I told every new client, and that's what kept them coming back. Within 8 months of that first cold email to Rima, I was earning more from Fixrite than I was from my day job. But I didn't quit yet, because I wasn't done proving something. Not to her, to myself. The day I handed in my resignation, my manager looked at me like I'd grown another head. "You sure about this, Adil? You've got a good thing here. Steady income, benefits." I smiled, calm, but firm. "I appreciate everything you've given me, sir, but it's time." He leaned back in his chair. "What are you going to do?" "I'm running my own company, now." He stared at me for a second, then gave a slow nod. "You've changed. I didn't think you had this in you a year ago." Neither did I. Walking out of that office for the last time should have felt like freedom. But as soon as I stepped outside, a wave of anxiety hit me. No more paychecks, no safety net. It was just me now. I went home, sat on the floor of my living room, and stared at the ceiling. I had savings, yes. I had clients. But I also had something new. Pressure. Fixrite was no longer a side hustle. It was my livelihood. And suddenly, every decision felt heavier. The next few months were intense. I worked 12 14-hour days. I handled client calls in the morning, managed projects in the afternoon, and reviewed code until midnight. I was exhausted, but alive. As Fixrite grew, I kept hearing the same thing from clients. "Do you know anyone who can help us manage our social media or build our email funnels?" I didn't. But I saw the opportunity. I started experimenting with automation tools for marketing. It was messy at first. I made mistakes, annoyed a few clients. Fixrite remained my first lost one, focused on tech systems. But with every AutoPulse failed test I learned for business growth. And then it hit me. What if I started a second business that didn't require one that focused solely on automating small business marketing? I launched a basic landing page and ran a few social media posts, follow-ups. Nothing fancy, something lean, just affordable. Want to automate your business without hiring a team? The idea kept me up for nights. The first week, I scribbled notes, silence, outlined not a single sign-up, tested software integrations. One small business owner from Lahore booked a call. I showed him the beta version of AutoPulse. "This is exactly what I need," he said. He signed up, and then told 2 friends. By the end of the 3rd month, I had 10 clients using AutoPulse, and half of them had already been Fixrite clients. I didn't just have a second business, I had an ecosystem. That realization was powerful, but success didn't come without sacrifice. I started forgetting things, birthdays, friend meetups, even meals. My phone buzzed constantly, my laptop was always open. People around me noticed. One evening, my younger sister called me and said, "You've built something amazing, but you're disappearing." She wasn't wrong. That night, I sat alone on my balcony and thought about everything. The breakup, the quiet nights learning code, the rush of signing new clients, the pressure of keeping them happy. And then I asked myself, what am I really chasing now? It wasn't about proving her wrong anymore. She was long gone. And to be honest, I didn't even think about her that often. No. Now it was about proving something else. That a simple man could build something complex, valuable, lasting. That simplicity didn't mean small thinking. It meant clarity, focus, integrity. I wasn't just building companies. I was building freedom. And for the first time since she left me, I realized I no longer needed her validation. I had outgrown the man who sat in that cafe, heartbroken and stunned. Now I was the kind of man I respected, and that was worth more than any apology she could ever give me. Success has a strange way of making noise, even if you don't announce it yourself. By the time AutoPulse crossed its first 50 clients, I started getting invited to networking events, online panels, and even university webinars as a young entrepreneur. It felt surreal. Me, the guy who used to debug printers and survive on instant noodles? People began to treat me differently. Clients called me sir. Investors asked about partnerships. Old college friends messaged out of the blue. Some with congratulations, some fishing for jobs. I handled it all politely, carefully. But inside, I stayed quiet, grounded. And then one day, an Instagram DM popped up. "Hey, I saw your interview on YouTube. You've really changed." I stared at the name for a long time. It was her. The girl who once told me I was too simple, that I didn't have ambition. The same girl who left without a second thought. I didn't reply right away. For the first time, I wasn't sure what to say. Over the next few days, she sent a few more messages. Short, cautious. "You look different. I'm really happy for you. Would be nice to catch up sometime?" I wasn't angry. I wasn't even bitter. Just surprised. Part of me wanted to ignore her. Another part was curious. After all, she was part of my story, even if she had walked out of it early, so I replied. "Hey, thanks. I hope you're doing well too." She answered almost immediately. Said she'd moved back to town recently. That things hadn't worked out the way she'd imagined. She didn't give many details, and I didn't ask. Eventually, she asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. Said, it might be nice to see each other, even just as friends. I agreed, out of curiosity, closure, maybe both. We met at a different cafe this time, sleeker, trendier, the kind of place we never used to go because it was too expensive. She arrived wearing a crisp blazer and high heels, but there was something different in her eyes. Not the same sharp confidence, something softer, maybe even uncertain. "A deal," she said, smiling. "Wow, you look different?" I finished for her. She laughed lightly. "Yes. In a good way." We sat down. Talked about surface things. Work, life, random memories. She worked in a marketing firm now, wasn't happy there. Said the pressure was exhausting. I listened, polite but detached. Then, after a pause, she said it. "I think I made a mistake. I didn't react right away. I was impatient. I thought ambition had to look a certain way. I didn't see what you were becoming." I met her eyes. Calm, steady. "It's okay," I said. "We were different people then." She looked down, at her cup. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if I'd stayed?" I thought about the sleepless nights, the silent hustle, the gut-wrenching failures, the small wins that turned into big ones, and how none of it would have happened if she hadn't left. So I answered honestly, I don't. Because if you'd stayed, I wouldn't be who I am now. She nodded slowly. The silence between us said the rest. When the bill came, I paid without hesitation. Not to prove anything, but because I could. And because I wanted to. We said goodbye outside the café. She hesitated for a moment, like she wanted to say something more. Instead, she just said, "Take care, Adil." And I did. I walked away, calm and centered. There was no dramatic revenge, no fire in my chest, because I didn't need validation from her or anyone else. The man she once left behind was gone, and in his place stood someone she could no longer touch. Not because I hated her, but because I had grown beyond the version of myself she knew. She came back looking for the old me. But he didn't live here anymore. After that meeting with her, something shifted in me. Not emotionally. I wasn't hurt or angry. But mentally, I started thinking about the legacy I was building. Fixrite was growing steadily, and Autopulse had started getting serious interest from small agencies and influencers. A few even offered to license the system and use it under their own branding. That was a new level of scale, and it tempted me. One investor reached out with a bold offer. "I want to take Autopulse international," he said on a Zoom call. "I'll invest 50 lakh right now. You just have to give up majority control." He was direct, confident, the kind of guy I would have been intimidated by 2 years ago. Now, I just listened. "Majority control?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. He leaned forward. "You'll still run it day to day, but we take it global. Think bigger, Adil. Why stop at small businesses? This could be the next major automation suite in South Asia." For a moment, I was tempted. 50 lakh could change a lot. I could upgrade the office, hire a full-time dev team, launch ads in 3 countries. But then I remembered why I'd started. Not to get rich fast, not to impress her, or anyone else. I started because I wanted to build something that made real impact, on my terms. Giving up control now felt like trading purpose for pace. So I declined. Politely, but firmly. He didn't take it well. "This is why small founders stay small," he snapped before hanging up. I sat in silence for a long time after that call, not because I doubted my choice, but because I was proud of it. The next morning, I went to the office early. My tiny team of 4 was already there, sipping chai and laughing over someone's buggy code. They believed in me. They'd taken a chance on a guy with no MBA, no flashy resume, no co-founder. Just a vision and relentless effort. I told them about the offer. Their eyes widened. "And you said no?" my operations lead asked. I nodded. "Because I trust us. We're not just building a product, we're building a culture." They didn't say anything for a second. Then someone clapped. Then another. Until the whole room echoed with small, sincere applause. That night, I reflected hard. Yes, I wanted growth, but not at the cost of losing what made this whole journey meaningful. So I shifted gears. Instead of chasing more clients, I focused on building stronger systems. Training modules, client onboarding guides, automation templates that even non-techies could use. I wanted Autopulse to feel human, not corporate. And that decision paid off. Within 3 months, our churn rate dropped by 40%. Clients stayed longer, referred others, and gave detailed feedback. One even said, "I've used tools that cost 5 times as much, but none of them understood my needs like this." That one message meant more than any investor pitch. Around the same time, I started mentoring, not officially. Just replying to emails, jumping on free calls, reviewing pitch decks for struggling founders. I remembered how lost I had felt at the beginning. I wanted to be the guide I never had. One message came from a college student who wrote, "I'm scared to start. Everyone says I'm too quiet to run a business." I smiled. "That used to be me." I replied, "Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you listen. And that's your superpower." He messaged back a week later, saying he'd launched his first blog and already got 500 visitors. That, to me, was success. Not just building a company, but building people. That's when I realized something even deeper. This journey wasn't about being flashy, or loud, or rich. It was about being effective. And if I stayed true to that, no one could take it away from me. Not investors, not exes, not doubt, just me. Focused, clear, still simple, but never small again. With both FixRite and Autopulse running successfully, people started calling me a serial entrepreneur. It sounded fancy, impressive, but behind the scenes, I was falling apart. I hadn't taken a real break in over a year. My average workday was 14 hours. My inbox was always full. My mind never shut off. I lived on caffeine, skipped meals, and slept like I owed the world something. I thought I was being productive, focused, sharp, but I was burning out. It started small, forgetting appointments, missing meals, then it got worse. I'd sit in front of my laptop, staring at the screen, unable to make simple decisions. One morning, I woke up and couldn't move my right hand properly. It was numb, tingling. I panicked. I called a doctor. After a series of tests, he gave me the verdict: nerve compression due to stress and overuse. "You're working yourself into the ground," he said. "Take a break before your body forces you to." I nodded. But inside, I resisted. I couldn't stop. What if everything fell apart? That evening, I walked into my office and looked around. My team was there, typing away, laughing, building, and I realized something. They didn't need me in every moment anymore. They were capable, reliable, passionate. I had built something that could stand without me hovering over it. So, for the first time in years, I gave myself permission to pause. I booked a solo trip to Skardu. No laptop, no meetings, just peace. It was the best decision I ever made. The mountains, the silence, the freezing air, it all reminded me of something I had forgotten. I wasn't just building businesses, I was building a life. And what's the point of success if you're too exhausted to enjoy it? On the 3rd day of my trip, I sat by a lake, journal in hand. I wrote a question at the top of the page. What do I want now? Not what I wanted then. To prove her wrong, to survive, to succeed. But now, and the answer came slowly, honestly, I want balance, peace, impact, and to help others rise without falling the way I did. When I returned to the city, I made some serious changes. I hired a full-time operations manager, delegated more, started taking weekends off, and I brought in a therapist and a wellness coach to offer free sessions for my team. Because if I wanted them to thrive, I had to lead by example. My businesses didn't shrink. In fact, they grew faster, because now, I was leading with clarity, not chaos. One evening as I left the office early, I ran into an old colleague from my IT job. He looked stunned. "A deal? Is that you?" "Man, I heard you were doing something big, but wow." We caught up briefly. I told him about FixRite, Autopulse, and the mentoring I was doing. He shook his head and laughed. "You always were the quiet guy in the corner. No one expected you to go this far." I smiled. Neither did I. But sometimes, pressure turns coal into diamonds. As I walked away, I thought about how far I'd come. From heartbreak and humiliation to being my own boss. With 2 growing companies and a life that finally felt mine. And, for once, I wasn't chasing anything. I was living it. But deep down, I knew there was still one chapter left to write. A chapter not about success or revenge, but about legacy. Who I would become. Not just in business, but in the eyes of those I chose to lift along the way. That chapter was coming. And I was ready to write it. With stability came clarity. I'd spent years building something I could be proud of. 2 companies. A reliable team. A quiet confidence that didn't need validation anymore. But I still felt something stirring inside me. A question I hadn't yet answered. Now that I've made it, who am I building for? I found the answer on a random Thursday afternoon during a mentoring session at a government university. I was invited to speak about automation and entrepreneurship. Typical stuff. The room was packed with students. Most wore tired expressions. Some looked excited, some distracted. I remembered being one of them. I told them my story. No filters. The heartbreak, the struggle, the rejections, the insomnia, the investor who told me I'd always stay small. And then I told them something I hadn't even said out loud before. I wasn't born special. I just refused to stay stuck. The room went silent. After the session, a young woman approached me quietly. Hijab neatly pinned, backpack hugged tight to her shoulder. She looked nervous. "Sir, can I ask something personal?" she said. "Of course. My brother also wanted to start his own business. But he gave up. People laughed at him, said he was too average. Now he won't even try." I nodded slowly. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say to him anymore. I paused, then said, "Tell him that even the people who laugh today might call him sir tomorrow, but only if he keeps going." She wiped her eyes, thanked me, and left. That moment stuck with me, because I'd been her brother, and I realized then, I wasn't just building products or profits. I was building proof. Proof that the quiet kid, the overlooked guy, the one who was once told he was too simple, could win. That evening, I made a decision. I created a mentorship program, Root Circle. Free, local, focused on first-gen founders and dreamers from under-resourced areas. I personally reviewed every application in the first batch. The stories broke me. One kid sold fruit on the street to buy his first second-hand laptop. A girl coded apps on her cousin's phone because her parents didn't allow her to own one. They weren't weak, they were warriors, and they didn't need handouts. They just needed someone to say, "You're not alone." As Root Circle grew, my inbox flooded with messages. Photos of students holding their first internship letters. Screenshots of people's first clients. One kid launched a SaaS tool using an auto pulse module and got 1,000 users in 2 months. He tagged me in a post. "From zero to launch, because someone believed in me before I did." That line? It broke me. I wasn't crying because I was sad. I was crying because this was the dream I didn't even know I had. Not the offices. Not the money. Impact. And just when I thought nothing could surprise me anymore, I received a handwritten letter at the office. It was from my old college professor, the one who once told me I'd never be cut out for business. "Dear Adil, I recently saw your interview and learned about Root Circle. I was wrong. You didn't just become a businessman. You became a leader. I'm proud of you. Professor Irfan." I sat in my office holding that letter and laughed softly. Not out of arrogance, but because life really does come full circle. I used to build for validation. Then I built for revenge. Now I build for them, the ones still waiting to believe in themselves. And in doing that, I found the version of myself I'd been chasing all along. The version that doesn't need to prove anything, because he already knows who he is. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. I was sipping tea on the balcony, reading the latest reports on Root Circle and planning our next outreach. The city buzzed below, unaware of the man who once walked its streets with nothing but hurt and hope in his pockets. My phone buzzed. It was a notification. "You've been nominated for Pakistan's Emerging Impact Leader Award." I stared at the screen, rereading it 3 times. Not Businessman of the Year, not Top Entrepreneur, Impact Leader. I smiled, not because of the recognition, but because of what it meant. It meant that the world was finally noticing what I had always known deep inside. Success isn't about volume, it's about value. That night, I didn't post about it. Didn't celebrate with champagne or luxury dinners. Instead, I went to my parents' home. My mother was watching her favorite drama. My father was half asleep in his chair. I sat beside them and said, "Aapko yaad hai, jab maine job chhodi thi aur sabne kaha tha main pagal ho gaya hoon." My mother gave me that same look, half worry, half love. "Haan beta, lekin tune sabit kar diya कि तू pagal nahi tha, तू अलग था." That hit harder than any award ever could. I thought back to the beginning, to her, the girl who said I was too simple. I don't hate her, not anymore. In fact, I'm grateful. She didn't break me. She revealed me. She showed me that I didn't need noise to matter, that I didn't need flash to be seen. That being too simple wasn't a flaw. It was a force. One that made me focus, build, grow, quietly, relentlessly. Months later, at the awards ceremony, I wore the same watch I bought with my first paycheck from Fixrite. I walked onto the stage. The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. But I wasn't thinking about the applause. I was thinking about the boy I used to be, sitting in a cramped flat Googling how to start a business with no money, feeling invisible, unworthy, rejected, and I wanted him to hear this. So I leaned into the mic, looked around and said, "They called me too simple, but maybe simple was exactly what the world needed. Not loud, not fake, just real, focused, and kind. So if anyone out there feels invisible, don't change to fit their vision. Build your own, and watch them turn around to see what they missed." The room went still. Then came the applause. Not the thunderous kind that fades fast, but the slow, respectful kind, the kind you earn. After the ceremony, a young man approached me with tears in his eyes. Sir, I'm also the quiet one. They say I'm boring, but today, you gave me permission to believe. I shook his hand. Good, now go build. Quietly, but fiercely. That was the moment I realized I didn't just own 2 companies. I owned my story, and that story? It started with heartbreak, but it ended with purpose.